Hey, happy Friday. And guess what it is? Break Free Friday, our favorite. I'm glad you're here. So, over the last few weeks, we've talked about procrastination, perfectionism, invisible contracts, emotional needs, and the hidden forces that shape our lives. So today I want to go even deeper. Surprise, surprise. I want to talk about our stories. Okay, so not the events of our life. I don't mean like our biography, not the things that, happen to you. I'm talking about the meaning you've attached to those events. Because two people can go through something similar and walk away with completely different stories. One person's experience, maybe be feel like a failure and they decide they're not capable. And another might experience the same failure and decide that they're resilient. So the meanings that we're attaching to these experiences is what creates these stories, and that forms our belief system. So one person, might experience rejection and conclude that they're difficult to love. And another learns they deserve a healthy relationship. So the event matters, but the meaning matters even more. Meaning becomes belief, and belief becomes identity. Identity is what influences our decisions, and our decisions create the quality of our lives. So here's the question I want you to hold throughout this session. Who would you be without your story? Not without those experiences, without the stories that no longer belong to you. One of my favorite metaphors in Root to Rise is the image of a diamond. It's actually the diamond heart is actually the logo that I created for my Glow Living company. And everything I do has, they're based on metaphors. So imagine this metaphor of a diamond and you're the diamond. Imagine that each of us is a multifaceted diamond. We're not just one thing, not one role, not one chapter, not one label. Some facets, really shine brightly, and some are kind of hidden in the shadows. And let's be honest, some of them need a little polishing. Some have been covered by years of criticism, disappointment, fear, or self-doubt. The goal of personal growth is not to become a different diamond, right? We're all unique and we all have value. The goal is to uncover the one you already are, the brilliant diamond you already are. Many of us spend years identifying with like a single facet of our diamond. We might have like a really strong one, the caretaker, for example. Or for me, it was the achiever. Or some people, it's the helper, or I'm the responsible one. Those may be parts of us, but they're not all of us. The challenge the challenge is that as children, we're meaning-making machines. Something happens and we immediately create a story to explain it. Like a parent criticizes us and we decide our feelings are too much. We're praised for achievement and decide our value comes from performance. Or we're rejected and we decide we aren't lovable. The event becomes a story, and a story becomes a belief. That belief becomes an identity, and eventually we stop questioning it. I was thinking about this while preparing for today, because when I look back at my own life, I realized there were many stories I could have chosen. My parents were divorced when I was really young, and even spent a night in foster care. I moved out when I was 17. I became a mother unexpectedly. I left the security of the corporate career and stepped into entrepreneurship. And there were moments where I could have created a story that was harder for me than everyone else, that life was harder. Wow, yeah, I could have created a story that life was harder for me than anyone else. a story that I was alone, a story that I couldn't trust people, a story that, I always have to struggle, a story that success belongs to other people and not me. But every experience presents us with two opportunities. We can focus on what happened, or we can decide what it means to us. Because those events matter and they can end up becoming beliefs or identities. The meaning really matters more than the event itself, because meaning becomes beliefs. And those beliefs are so powerful that they can form those identities. So looking back, I wasn't shaped only by what happened to me. I was shaped by the stories I created about what happened. And so were you. Some of those stories I hear most often are, I'm too much. I'm too emotional. I'm too sensitive. I'm too ambitious, too passionate, too visible. Whenever I hear someone say that, that word too, like I'm too something, I always want to ask, too much for whom? Too much for what? Too much according to whose standards? There's comparison going on. Too much compared to what? So many people spend years shrinking themselves. They do it to make others feel comfortable. They may lower their voice, hide their gifts in some way, suppress their own needs, and dim their light. Not because they're broken, because somewhere along the way they learned that being fully themselves created discomfort for other people. But fitting in and belonging are not the same thing. Fitting in often requires us to edit ourselves, and belonging allows us to be ourselves. So let me ask you, where are you making yourself a little smaller right now? Where might you be holding back a dream, a talent, a truth, a boundary, maybe like an internal desire? Sometimes the greatest act of courage is not becoming more. It's stopping the habit of becoming less. More sometimes adds pressure, coming from an overachiever like me, I know the impact of becoming more. And I think it's great. Because of that, I've achieved a lot at a young age, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of everything. And it can add stress. So we have to weigh that out. But becoming less, nobody respects themselves at the end of the day when they know that they're capable of so much more and they don't allow themselves to express it. So if you're struggling with limiting your joy, holding back on your dreams, diminishing your light in any way, let's choose today to stop the habit of becoming less. Another story that I hear a lot is related to imposter syndrome. It suggests that something's wrong with you. Like when somebody says, people don't always call it imposter syndrome, of course. It's the way that they're communicating is like, I'm not good enough for that, or maybe I'll start, once I receive more training, or, I'm not good enough. But what if the discomfort you're feeling isn't evidence that you're underqualified? What if it's evidence that you're just growing? So think about like a hermit crab. At some point, its shell becomes too small and it has to leave the old shell before it can grow into a new one. For a period of time, it's vulnerable. Okay, it goes from one shell to the next. This in between identities. And I think that that's really scary. It's really scary for people to decide to leave the comfort of one identity, even if, well, let's just say the familiarity of one identity, because it might not actually be comfortable, that identity. If it's not authentic, then it's actually not comfortable. But when something's familiar, or when we're scared of taking on something new and how it'll land on people around us and stuff, then we're having fear that's limiting our lives, and we're diminishing ourselves. And that's what I mean by, not fully expressing ourselves and holding ourselves back or living small. I think many people are living there. They're no longer who they used to be, but they don't yet fully believe who they're becoming. And honestly, that's not necessarily a sign of an imposter. It's just a sign that they're expanding and they're transitioning. I remember moments when I was writing my book when I was questioning myself because honestly, I never started out, like in life, I didn't have the goal of becoming an author. That wasn't an identity that I even thought of for myself. But when I started to, you know, have all this information that I wanted to share, and I was starting to see a framework develop that I could offer out, I put it to paper and I worked on it. But while I was going through it, there were times when I was questioning myself, like, oh, I'm a marketing consultant and I've had coach training. I'm certified coach, but who am I to write this book? Who am I to teach these ideas? And there's just so many experts out there, so many other authors. But eventually I realized the goal wasn't to, you know, be recognized for that or try to be, follow in somebody else's footsteps. The goal was to be fully expressed, fully myself, and following through with that and taking on that identity and actually calling myself an author was what was required to be able to offer it into the world, for the world to realize how important it was. It required me to know that I am important and the work is important. And I have to step out from my comfort zone and put myself in the light, put myself in the sun. Because the thing is that the world doesn't need another version of someone else. I'm not trying to be Mel Robbins or whatever. It needs the version of you that you can be and who you just naturally, organically are. And here's what's important. Awareness is not the same thing as change. Many people believe that if they identify the story that they're done, like the story behind an experience. But the awareness is simply opening the door to change. Change requires practice. I mean, we have to become aware of it. And that's why we do all the exercises and we talk about it in the Life Lounge and we work on the workbook, and all of that. We need to have that self-discovery process, and that's what we're doing here. And then we need tools. We need to be able to put it into practice. So if you've been telling yourself the same story for 20 years, you're probably not going to replace it in one afternoon. You may not even realize or attach the meaning that it's a story that could be holding you back. Or you might have a little niggle, like a little intuition that it is, but you really haven't looked at it. Yeah, it's like, okay, we need to be self-aware, but then what do we do about it? So imagine playing the same song on a piano for 20 years, then deciding to learn a new one. The old song feels really natural. Your fingers know what to do, and the new song requires attention, focus, practice. That's how stories work in our lives. The goal isn't to eliminate every limiting thought. The goal is to step automatically believing, it's, let's see, the better way of explaining it is that we want to stop believing every limiting thought. Thank you. What I'm saying is we want to recognize that there are thoughts that are coming in. If I get a thought that, who am I to deliver this content? Or, who am I to write this book? That's a thought. It came in. I don't have to attach to it. I don't have to go, that's so true. No, I can say, that's a thought. Most likely the thought is there because it's keeping me safe in some way. It's like the primitive brain saying, to be safe, you need to stay in this zone. And I'm saying, no, I'm a hermit. That's a crab that's going to go from this tiny shell to a bigger shell. And it means being vulnerable and courageous and not attaching to the thought that I'm the small shell crab. I have to go, thank you for keeping me safe. But no, I'm the bigger shell crab. I'm that bitch. So anyway, let's make this practical because I think the awareness part is good and we can talk about how to, look at the different aspects of your life. But I also want you to leave with tools that really break free because that's what Free Friday is all about. So the first step is to catch the story, right? We have to become aware of it. And the next time you hear yourself think, I'm not ready, I can't do that. People like me don't do things like that. Whatever that story, or like it's really a thought, that at that point that comes in, just pause and simply say, that's a thought. That's a story, not a fact. Something I can choose to adopt or choose to reject. I'm in my higher self, the bigger person, deciding whether my thoughts are for me and empowering me, or if they're thoughts that are keeping me safe, yet making me feel small. I have a choice. So the second step is to question it, right? So we are now aware of it, and then we have to question it. Where did I learn this? Who taught me this? Where did I pick this up? Is it actually true? Would I say this to someone I love? Because if we're practicing self-love here, we wouldn't say things that diminish ourselves. We wouldn't say things that kept us small. Would we say it to someone we love? Most stories begin to weaken the moment we investigate them. So it can start to break down right there. And the third step is to find a truer story. This is where we get to empower ourselves. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is not just positive thinking. It's a truer story for us where we are in life right now. Sometimes the stories that come in are from a past version of ourselves, maybe one that wasn't as wise, wasn't as experienced. And so we need a truer story for where we are now. So if it's I'm too much, which I have heard a number of times from women, I'm too much. Like if I'm really fully expressive, I get too emotional or too passionate, or like I dominate the conversation or the room or whatever. I'm too much can become my passion, right? My passionate nature won't be for everyone. And that's okay. There were times when I realized my book is not going to be for everyone. I think everyone can benefit. I truly, truly believe that deep in my core. But people are at different levels of wanting to grow and wanting to support themselves. And so those who aren't ready, it's not going to be for. And my job is not to convince people. It's to be there as a resource for those who are ready. So my passion won't be for everyone, and that's okay. I've got to be of service to those who do want it and do need me. So, or I'm behind in life becomes I'm on my own timeline. I'm having my own experience. I don't need to be like everybody else. That doesn't necessarily guarantee happiness to race through at somebody else's pace. Or I'm not qualified becomes I can learn and I can find the information. I can learn what I need to know to become successful. You don't have to already have that in order to start on that journey. And that brings us to the fourth step, which is action. Stories change through evidence. So if your story says you're not confident, what would a confident person do today? You can look at different techniques that people are using. I mean, I think so many podcasts are people talking about what's worked for them and their success. So we can learn from other people, to gain confidence and try their techniques if we're not sure for ourselves, and then take a small action to build that sense of confidence. Having something, even a small something, be successful, then, gives you the confidence for that next, effort. So, sending an outreach email to somebody important to you, or you picking up the phone and making a call to that person. Sometimes I'll hide behind email, actually. I will find that, oh, I'll shoot them an email, and if I hear something, I hear something, and if I don't, it's not, they would have rejected me if I called them. So sometimes making the call and really learning what that person's looking for and finding a way to position what I'm offering according to their needs can open something up that an email wouldn't, because it's one directional and I'm not taking into account what they're telling me they're looking for. It may be that you've had this idea and it's kind of locked inside of you, or maybe you've talked to a few people close to you about it, but you haven't really shared it, shared it with community, shared it with people of influence. So just actually sharing the idea may give you validation or give you the confidence that that is a good idea, and that you should move forward with it. We can get validation. Or maybe it's a bad idea, or just nobody's really jumping on it, and that could give you some clues about whether to continue to invest in that direction. It might have, and if you're really not sure, it might just be asking the question about it to somebody that you admire, or, asking the question out in a thread or whatever. But asking questions, I just want to say on the side note, be discerning about what you decide to align to as far as people's answers. You got to remember, you might be looking through rose-colored glasses about an idea, and you put your question out there about whether, to get validation, and then somebody might be looking from a blue lens or a green lens, and they're giving you a totally different, let's just say potentially distorted view, or at least a different vantage point. On one hand, having that other way of thinking can expand your idea or expand, how to look at it. But on the other hand, they may not be looking at it the same way or have all the information that you do. So just use critical thinking. But just the act of asking the question and putting it out there, is really important. Another action could be setting a boundary. Maybe there's something that, is going on in your life that once you set that boundary, it can set you free from whatever, that is causing you, and that not having the boundary is creating suffering or stress. So actually taking the action of setting the boundary could be with a boss or a partner, or a family member or friend, that you need the boundary, but it's hard to ask for it or assert it. And then once you do, relief, right? Action is really the thing that creates the evidence and strengthens a belief, that validates an idea, or whether that means it's a good idea or a bad idea, or like it can help give you that information. And it's super important to gather that when you're in, the kind of mode that we're all in as high achieving people looking for the next level, right? We need a little bit of evidence before we decide what story we want to take on. And, it's because it can strengthen our beliefs about what is important about it, which can, dovetail into our why. And our why, when we're connected to it, is what keeps us going when things get really, really hard. And it also allows us to decide how firmly entrenched we want those beliefs to be, and how much we want them to shape our identity. So that's a lot of kind of theory, some action steps, obviously, but, I'm bringing you along to this idea that we shape our identities of these multifaceted diamonds by our belief system and kind of to challenge those beliefs. They're not always true, or they're not always serving you, and there's other ways of looking at it. So let's see, I want to give you a challenge. Okay. This could really help. For the next 7 days, just become a detective. Okay. Put that detective hat on, and don't don't worry about having to make any big decisions that you don't need to make right now. We talked to Devin and Joelle about, you know, the making decisions and looking at how kind of much work you need to, how much time and effort you need to put into making those decisions. And they're different if it's something as simple as which hat should I wear today, then I want to get a haircut. It's a little bit more, involved in cutting your hair, and you're going to have to, you know, deal with that decision for a little bit of time. And then the extreme is getting a tattoo where you're making a decision that can affect, your whole life. So for the next 7 days, just be the detective and write down every limiting story that you notice telling yourself. I'm too this. I'm not ready for that. I need to do this before I do that. Like any story that might be limiting you, limiting your actions, limiting your forward momentum, notice it. Write it down. Don't argue with it. Don't try to fix it immediately. Just collect it, because at the end of the week, so by the time we get back to next Break Free Friday, we're going to look for patterns in those thoughts. So you'll start to see, oh, this thought is really giving me the belief that I'm not ready, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I need more money or to do this. Whatever it is, you're going to look for those patterns, because most likely whatever your brain is serving up to you in terms of your thoughts about how you're seeing this, those thoughts that you may naturally assume are true, are following a pattern. They're following a pattern that you're conditioning over time. And that conditioning is what creates that belief. And again, like I said earlier, the belief becomes the identity. So we're really working on shining up this diamond in a way where the facets of the diamond truly reflect who we are. They're shined up and polished, and they're consciously created. And we understand the patterns that have held us back from shining our light out into the world, out reflecting the sun, or finding the energy from within. You might discover that one story has been quietly influencing multiple areas of your life when you look at these patterns. So let's talk about identities a little more. Many people don't really realize that they've attached identities that no longer serve them. It's just because they've hung around for so long, the strong one, the caretaker, or I'm the peacemaker, I'm the achiever, like we talked about, that I've struggled with. When even when those identities create suffering, we protect them, because they feel so familiar. Again, not necessarily comfortable, but familiar. Who would you be if you weren't always the strong one? Right? Who would you be if you weren't always the caretaker? Who would you be if you allowed yourself to receive support? That's the deeper work. Not changing who you are, but expanding who you allow yourself to be. I want you to imagine your life as a book. Books. Love books. Every chapter has had a purpose. Some chapters are beautiful, some chapters are painful, some chapters taught us lessons that you never really wanted to learn. What chapter are you in right now? Are you in a chapter of healing, of learning, rebuilding, being courageous, becoming something new, moving to a different shell size? Give a title to that chapter. This is all about awareness, right? We're bringing these things to light. What do we believe about ourselves, our identities, the thoughts that our brain is serving up, which could be there to try to keep us safe? It's that reptilian brain. It's that primitive brain that really just cares about survival and keeping us safe. And when it serves up those thoughts, are we consciously recognizing that they're thoughts that we can choose, or are we just accepting them for what they are? So once you've identified the chapter that you're in right now, ask yourself, what do I want the next chapter to be called? Because you may not be able to change every fact from your past, but you can absolutely have a say in what happens next. The facts may not change, but the meaning can. And when the meaning changes, the future changes. You know, it's empowering to think that we actually have some influence over our futures in this way. Are we going to keep conditioning negative thoughts or thoughts that hold us back, beliefs that, limit our growth, that keep us playing small? Or are we going to empower ourselves and say, hmm, maybe not all that is true, or maybe it's just trying to keep us safe? And, this might be where some inner child work needs to happen, because I've been looking a lot at internal family systems and learning about these different parts of ourselves. And sometimes the part that needs to stay safe, to stay safe is the young one, the one that is serving you the thoughts of not changing because at least it knows what to count on, or, that familiar space that she's in. And she needs to know that your wiser, older, more experienced self can take over when things get tough and say, okay, I'm older now. I understand that you're scared of change, and I got this. I'm ready to grow, and we're going to be okay. It's a little bit of like mothering the inner child that might be able to support you in this process. So look into inner child work. I think I have an inner child specific, I know I have an inner child specific chapter in my book and stuff. And there's lots of resources online about this. But if you're getting served up a lot of messages in your brain that are about keeping you safe, it's one tool to examine and see if the little girl inside is, calling out for reassurance that you're going to be safe, even though you're trying something new. Because I'm all about growth. I truly believe that when we're growing, we're feeling a sense of progress. And the progress can bring about a feeling of joy. And I think that's why I've always been an achiever type, is because I love that feeling of joy that comes from progress and achieving things. And then if I'm stringing along a lot of events that bring about those joyful feelings, then the sum total of my life is a positive one that feels more fulfilling. So I truly believe it's the recipe for a fulfilled life, is feeling progress in the things that are deeply meaningful to us, not just any old achievements, not just, checking off to-do lists, but achieving the things that we have a deep why around, that a deep need to experience or to manifest, you know. And I think that because thoughts move to beliefs that move to, identities that move to, all this stuff, that it's really important that we have these tools to challenge ourselves with A, becoming aware, B, questioning these thoughts that are coming into our minds that have been holding us back, and C, being willing to take actions that will help us have experiences that'll teach us things that we need to grow. and build confidence in ourselves and be able to make decisions that will get us closer to the manifestation we're looking for in our lives for what we want to accomplish in this lifetime. Because I just keep thinking YOLO. It's, our if this is it, then let's do it. And so you're not just one facet of a diamond, you're the whole diamond. Perhaps the better question isn't who you would be without your story. Perhaps the question is who you would be without the stories that no longer belong to you, that no longer serve you, that have been keeping you small. Because beneath those stories are your values, your gifts, your strengths, your resilience, and your capacity to grow and have that forward momentum, that progression that brings joy and fulfillment. The real you has been there all along, like the diamond beneath layers of dust. It doesn't need to be created. It simply needs to be uncovered, right? We want to uncover the diamond that's been, I don't know, sequestered or dimmed as a result of limiting beliefs. That's what we're talking about here. Beneath those stories, there's a sparkling diamond that just needs to be shined up. It's not an empty space waiting to be filled either. Beneath the stories is the real you. And perhaps that's the greatest freedom of all, allowing yourself to shine out and be all of you without the limiting belief saying you're too much or you're not enough. And realizing that who you are, who you're looking for, has been there the whole time. And it's about permission. It's about permission to allow yourself to shine and permission to know that, hey, even if you're not for everyone, that's okay. Some people are going to resonate with you, and those are the people that, get it and are deserving of you. So I really want you to think about and recognize these thoughts and write down any limiting beliefs that you've had. An entire week of doing this will show you those patterns. Breaking free, having this Break Free Friday is about recognizing patterns that are unconscious and bringing them into the light so that we can do the coaching work to break free from them if they've been holding us back. And encouraging the good patterns as well. So if you are conditioning a good pattern, looking at how you're doing that and encouraging it, using mantras, using incantations. Tony Robbins talks about incantations and incantations. And I always thought that was clever because we can tell ourselves incantations that basically hold us back. And because they're repeated so much over such a long period of time, they become those deeply ingrained beliefs. So we can switch them a little bit to be incantations instead of incantations, and the whole world opens up. It's a whole different world of support, internal support that we're creating for ourselves using the better language. When we use certain language with ourselves, like we have these thoughts, we attach meanings to them, and I really believe that those meanings are what summons emotions. We can choose that. Like, for example, I always use the example of racing to a meeting, and you're in the car and somebody cuts you off and you're late for the meeting, and you burst into the meeting and kind of land, and different choices about how you looked at what happened can determine which energy arrows you're sending out into the room, right? It could be something as simple as, God, that was so annoying. This guy cut me off and it made me late. Sorry, everybody. To, I'm effing pissed. I could have died. That's a very different energy than, being annoyed, for example, being peeved, or, getting to that level of anger where you're super pissed off. And so those beliefs about it, the story we attach to that experience is what summons the energy, the emotions, and what we need to communicate out. And when we're communicating out with that level of intensity, we're sending energy arrows directly into the people around us. And if they don't have proper psychic protections to deal with it, they might feel like you're too much. And that's what you are trying to get away from. It's like, okay, I'm going to attach a belief that allows me to have, different meaning attached. Another meaning from that scenario could have been, wow, I'm so grateful to be alive. That was really scary, and I got cut off, and it could have caused an accident. I'm just so glad that it didn't, and I can be with you all here today. That's a very different energy. And so that energy arrow you're sending to other people in that situation, it's going to make them feel very differently about you and how you're coming off towards them. Right? So being aware of the energy that we are sending out, but there's something that has to happen before that, which is, attaching a meaning that's summoning the right emotion, an emotion that will help you when you're communicating to other people, communicate in a way that is not going to be sending out super negative energy arrows. Maybe it's sending out energy arrows that you also want them to feel, like gratitude and joy and happiness and appreciation for things and stuff. So, most people are not deep diving into this level of consciousness. And I want to invite you to think about, like, wow, I am so appreciative of being open to this today. Like, this is going to help me when I venture out into the world and something happens, to think, how do I want to, I'm like instantly upset about something. Is there another way of looking at it? Should I reframe this for myself and for the people around me to be, a positive, look, I'm not Pollyanna. I'm not saying, oh, turn a really bad thing that happened into, ooh, it didn't bother me, even when it did. I'm saying, what is actually going to serve you? And that is going to be at least creating and attaching a meaning to these stories that supports your life. And that's up to you to decide. That's up to you to decide how you want to do that, knowing that it affects you and your, way you handle your life and feel in this life. And it affects your community, people that are around you experiencing you and your energy. I got a call from my homeowner's insurance today saying that the FAIR plan is requiring me to do basically thousands of dollars worth of yard work and cutbacks. I had a yard gardener give me a bid for $2,000, I think it was, just so that I can stay on my insurance. California and the fires and everything, don't get me started. And I immediately just started to feel sad and overwhelmed, and like life is just too much. It's like every day I wake up with the intention of having a great day and giving back to the world, and then what the world gives me back is, more expenses and tasks and to-dos. And my boyfriend called, and I was like feeling sorry for myself in that moment. I'm like, I don't know if you want to call right now because I'm just feeling upset. And I kind of was going on and on and on. And then I caught myself and I said, wow, I'm sending these negative energy arrows out to somebody who was just calling to try to brighten my day. And instead, I just, took him down a notch and made him worry about me and feel sad for me and everything. And this is about taking personal responsibility, for ourselves and how we show up in the world. And it's very difficult to stay on that conscious level when we're feeling strong emotions. And when I invite you to say, okay, what is creating those strong emotions? It's usually a meaning that we're attaching to it. So it gets back to the beginning of our call about, these stories that we're attaching. I can attach a totally different story, which is I'm really lucky to be a homeowner, right? And yeah, there's going to be maintenance, but it could beautify my yard. It could make my house more valuable. So I started to question my own reaction. And I'm telling you, it takes consciousness and time and awareness. And I'm telling you my personal experience, to use myself as an example, because I struggle with it too. I can coach all day long to other people about it, but then I have a setback and I fall right back into old patterns. And I just don't want other people to be, struggling and suffering in life. And that's why I wrote my book. That's why I am doing the Life Lounge, is to share tools and techniques and my own vulnerability, the habits and actions that I've been taking, and how to really optimize my life and the meanings I'm attaching to things, the belief system I have, my value system, how I'm communicating out into the world, how I'm showing up in this world. And I'm just inviting you, to stay with me, through this, and keep coming back to Break Free Fridays, because we're going to keep going deeper and deeper. And wow, like where we're going to be in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, it's going to be the future, right? It's that chapter writing that I was talking about earlier. We're going to write a chapter by breaking patterns to break free from limiting thoughts and beliefs, so that our future is optimized in one of joy and deep level fulfillment. That's really what I'm seeking with all of this, is for everyone to do everything they can to feel happy in life, to love life, even when it's hard, it's messy, and it's uncertain. It's not always easy to love life. I know that. I'm experiencing that on the daily. And that's why I wrote my book. That's why I'm here. Again, it's to troubleshoot this stuff, in a sense. It's come up with real tools, real coaching skills that will work. They are transformative. I know 100% for sure this stuff transforms lives. 100%. I would not be efforting as much as I am with writing and self-publishing and showing up to these lives and being ready and all of that stuff if I didn't fully believe in the power of these tools. So watch the replay if you have to. Otherwise, trust that you have absorbed what I'm saying and that you're on this journey with me. And I'm just so grateful to have you here. And I look forward to you giving me your comments, telling me what works, what landed. It really helps me when I get feedback, so that I can know which areas, to dive deeper into, which areas, I've hit the nail on the head on, which areas were confusing. Just, give me your feedback, and I'm happy to continue to do these, and also to do some live sessions where you're present and providing feedback live, or if you need help, I can coach you live. And let's turn this into a thriving community of people that are supporting each other to be fulfilled on a very, very deep level, and setting the agreement that we're all here to shine up our diamonds, to polish up those different facets of ourselves, to shine as brightly in this community as possible, so that we can serve at a higher level. We can provide our gifts to each other, so that we can all grow and feel that sense of progress that brings joy and fulfillment. So I just want to thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to our next Break Free Friday. So come back. Talk to you later. Bye.